Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of We Read Allegedly, where we talk about books that we are allegedly reading. And sometimes we didn't, sometimes we do, but we're going to talk about them. This week's book we are talking about is Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits by my favorite author of all time, David Wong, also known as Jason Pargin. But before we dip into that, let's talk about other books that we've been reading allegedly. Squidzilla, the Mike Killa. What do you got going on underneath that book?
Hello. Hi. I'm allegedly reading some things. This is going to be a list. I'm not going to title them all. This is going to be a umbrella statement, I should say, which is to say that I just borrowed 9 books from the library on Libby and put 4 on hold, and they are all time travel stories that I have decided to start going through.
Oh, somebody's doing research for the new project.
Yes, I am. New project coming soon to a store near you.
Mm-hmm.
But it hasn't happened yet, so. It's
something that both Squid and I are working on.
Which, by March, we might have more information, so. Mm-hmm. Which is when, it's March right now, guys. Welcome to March. Hello. It's snowing outside.
From the past.
Yes.
Message transmission to the future. Be on the lookout for something that might have just dropped.
From the future to the past, honestly, very fitting for the topic. So yeah, me and John have some things coming soon. And I am reading a lot of books about time travel, if that gives you any sort of hint.
I don't know what's going on. But cool.
So there's a whole lot of books on my Libby now.
And that other voice that you just heard there is the amazing Celeste.
Hello.
Hello. What are you reading, Celeste? Sell us on it.
I am reading a book called Thistlefoot.
Thistlefoot. I think you've been trying to sell me on that already, haven't you?
I'm trying to sell you that. It is a retelling of the lore of Baba Yaga.
Ooh.
And so Thistlefoot is the name of the house. The Yaga siblings are in America. It is modern day. And they are told that someone in the old country has passed and left them something. And they have to go to New York to pick it up. And it's this big crate. And they open the crate and it's a house on legs. And so there's some other things. It's a very fantastical world. Each of the Yaga siblings has some magical ability that they try to hide. They don't fully understand. At the same time, it's switching back and forth between the perspective of the brother, the perspective of the sister, and the perspective of the house. Because the house is telling us a story.
For some reason, when you said the Yaga siblings, I thought there was 3. I'm not sure why.
Only 2 to my knowledge, but I'm only about halfway through. So this is a TikTok maybe buy it read. I thoroughly enjoy it.
TikTok made you buy it?
Yes.
Like they put a gun to your head and said, you need to buy this book?
Are you on Book Talk?
What?
Yes.
that sounds pretty accurate.
That's pretty much
100% can't confirm. That's what happened.
All right. Wow, that just threw me off. All right. Well, I guess I'll just go on to what I'm reading, which I was not threatened by gunpoint to acquire. I have just started The Case of the Damaged Detective, which is the first book in the 5-minute Sherlock series by Drew Hayes. Yes, that Drew Hayes, the guy who wrote the last book that we read, the Fred the Vampire. So this will be interesting for me to read, as it does not appear to be written in that every chapter is its own confined story style. So it is about a man who has been injected with a drug that forces his brain to operate beyond normal capacity, but he has to keep his brain stimulated or he dies. And there is a secret agent that has been assigned to watching him so they can study him. So that's about as far as I am right now in the book. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
That does sound interesting.
Now
he has to keep his brain stimulated, like he has to keep thinking things, or like, are we talking like Crank level of?
No, he has to keep himself like he can't get bored, basically.
So like Crank, probably not as intense as.
I haven't seen Crank, so I don't know.
He has to keep his adrenaline going.
Oh, nice.
Like the whole time. Which is a lot. It's a lot. It's not a movie that I would suggest for people to watch, but...
Didn't realize we were talking about a movie.
It's a Jason Statham movie, so I've seen it.
Well, of course you have. It's Jason Statham, and we all know your feelings on that topic.
Yeah.
But we are not talking about Jason Statham this episode. We are talking about Futuristic Violence in Fancy Suits by David Wong, also known as Jason
Statham could play in if they were to make it a movie.
All right. Futuristic Violence in Fancy Suits by that guy who I'm just going to call him David Wong going forward because that's who he is to me. Reading the back of it from the disturbed imagination of New York Times best-selling author David Wong, an all-new, darkly hilarious adventure. Nightmarish villains and with superhuman enhancements, an all-seeing social network that tracks your every move, mysterious smooth-talking power players who lurk from behind the scenes, a young woman from the trailer park, and her very smelly cat. Together, they will decide the future of mankind. Get ready for a world in which anyone can have the powers of a god or fame of a pop star, in which human achievement soars to new heights, while its depravity plunges to the blackest depths. A world in which at least one cat smells like a seafood shop's dumpster on a hot summer day. This is the world in which Zoe Ash finds herself, navigating a futuristic city in which one can find elements of the fantastic, nightmarish, and ridiculous on every street corner. Her only trusted advisor is the aforementioned cat, but even in the future, cats cannot give advice. At least not any that you'd want to follow. Will Zoe figure it all out in time? Or maybe the question is, will you? After all, the future is coming sooner than you think. That was the back of the book.
That sounds like the book we read.
What did we think about this book? I mean, I know what I think about this book. But this is another one of those books that I am super curious about the two of you, because this is one that I've been wanting to drop on you guys since we started this podcast. So we'll start with Squid because she's giving me the I'm not sure I want to talk look, but
I need to hydrate before I go into this.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
Oh no. I have a feeling this is the forewarned commentary on men writing women.
Might be, because he shouldn't.
Oh no.
That's my first thought. It's mostly just that he should stick to having his main characters be men.
I'm fascinated by this.
Tell us more, Squid.
I just didn't find Zoe to be a realistic character. Which is not to say, I mean, the whole story is, fantastical. But I don't know, man. Once again, I didn't hate the book. So we can keep this off the list of things that Squid hated.
Okay.
I would not read another David Wong book. Like I would say 2 is enough, but really 1.5 is enough because I didn't finish John Dies at the end.
Now, let me ask you, what is it about David Wong that you dislike? Because apparently that's the territory it seems like we're going into on this. And with him being one of my favorite, being my favorite author, I am super curious as to your perspective in this situation.
I don't feel like my opinion is going to be super surprising, given that you guys know me. Some of his humor I found very funny. There were a few lines that actually made me laugh, not just do a little breath out of my nose. Like, that was a good one. But I laughed at a few lines. And then for every good line he had about 16 fart jokes before or after it that I went.
Fair.
You can put that every so often if you want it to be funny, but it's not anymore. I don't need to read that anymore. That's not humor that I find interesting.
And it was at that point that we all realized that John is secretly a 13-year-old boy in a 40-year-old man's body. It's not a secret,
John. I think we've all established this well before this episode of the podcast.
I think we've also established that Celeste is a 13-year-old girl. Because like that's funny too.
I think we've established that Squid has no sense of humor, and if she does, it's usually about violence. So
there's plenty of that in this book to be had too.
I liked those parts. Those parts were funny.
What about you, Celeste? Just overarching comments as far as, did you enjoy the book?
Yeah, I did actually. I enjoyed it. I'm probably going to read the second one, even though we will never read it on this podcast.
Not because it's bad, mind you. I have read the second
won't
book.
Let us.
Well, there's that too, but there is an issue with the title, because if you want to understand Squid's comments as far as David Wong's sense of humor, look at the title of the next book in this particular series, and you will understand.
There's you know, you can get creative in how you describe male and female parts every so often if you want to be funny, but when you do it every few paragraphs, it's just, that's woof.
And I will say this book was better than John Dies at the End about that.
Yes.
Like,
because I finished this one.
John Dies at the End was over the top for me. This one was crude, but not to the point of where I was like, ugh, this kind of makes me not like it. Mm-hmm. Like I actually know someone I'm probably going to recommend this book to, because I think she'll enjoy it.
Anyone I know?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's get into this book a little bit, because we have had some, how to put it, we have had some conversation in our side chats that have kind of masked our feelings about this book, because we like to keep the feelings fresh for the podcast,
and so I can really dig in my knife sometimes. Just sneak up on them.
Hey, that's totally fine. It's those reactions that make podcasts worth listening to. Let's break it down into some of the scenes here. Like, what was there anything in this book that you were like, yeah, I dig that. That was cool.
The tacos being delivered by drone.
I would like a taco drone. That would be great.
I legitimately, in my Goodreads, if you follow my Goodreads, it wasn't that. It was something else that they mentioned, but I'm legitimately going, why is this not a franchise? Oh, it was the Awesome Chonga franchise, where everything, according to the ads, you could get about just anything, as long as it was wrapped in a thick tortilla and deep fried to a crisp. I'm like, why is this not a thing?
I would want that. Yes. Put it directly into my mouth.
I would like to put it in my mouth myself, please, but thank you. Yeah, I would like that.
Yeah. Give it to my hands and I will put it into my mouth. But then the little drone that had the Mexican hat, the sombrero on it. At least that's how I pictured it from the description.
I guess also how I pictured it.
Questioning if that was actually part of the description. But I'm like, that's a legitimate, like, Why is this not a thing?
Or a drop party.
No, that was no.
No?
No.
That would be something
I don't want to be
that I
shoved
would
off a
not-
building. Even if there is a cushion at the bottom.
I'm the only one who would participate at a drop party?
I don't do heights.
I'm okay with heights as long as I'm harnessed in. Like I'll do zip lines and rock walls and stuff like that.
Rock walls.
Just random falling. No, I'm good, thanks. I legitimately thought they were going to drop the body.
I will say speaking of drop parties, it highlights one of the things that I dislike about this book.
Okay.
Which is that the number of scenes that ended on a quote unquote cliffhanger of things being terrible. And then the very next line, it's like, and everything is great. I'm like, I'm bored. I need one of these things to be a bad thing or it loses all meaning. Like, no one died at the end.
Neither did John.
Someone should die.
Plenty of people died. It's just none of the main characters died.
There's a lot.
Like the guy with the dolls.
Yeah.
Yeah, you set a dude's crotch on fire. You know, that's probably going to cause them to die or wish they had.
Well, I don't know about that.
I'm with Zoe on this because there is a line where she goes, "Can you really die from having your crotch set on fire?"
Like, I suppose if it's left untreated, sure.
If you are intoxicated and have a lot of alcohol all over you, then it's not just a crotch fire, it's an everything fire.
This is true. And if you don't attempt to put the fire out, sure, that could kill you.
I have a story for this, but it's not for on air.
Great.
Really? Because we just did like 3 minutes on burning someone's crotch, so...
Not even the most questionable thing about this book.
So yeah, so this book is a lot. There's a lot of fantastical stuff. I personally, like, one of the best things that they did was the critique on social media, basically, that they do throughout this with the Blink Network, which, let's face it, TikTok, YouTube. That's basically what this is addressing.
I don't know about that. I don't agree with that statement.
Okay.
I don't think Jason agrees with that statement either, because he had a whole section in the back of the book about commentary on social media. So
honestly, it felt more like, and this is an old one, but does anybody remember Periscope?
Yeah.
I remember Periscope
for a while.
Mm-hmm.
That's more like what it felt like, what Blink felt like.
But in the same sense, I still keep seeing people coming up with wired glasses and advertising them on the internet, and I'm like, it's Blink glasses. Cool. No.
I mean, that same concept applies to, like, I don't know if you guys have seen Black Mirror.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, specifically does it as commentary on social media, but just this idea of being more engrossed in capturing things that are happening as opposed to, like, participating
experiencing
in
them.
Or even, like, intervening for things that are bad, which this book does. But I don't necessarily think that he was making social commentary about social media and its prevalence as much as it was a tool that also showed, like, how godless this city was. Like,
yeah.
They could have done it without Blink cameras and still been like, and all the people are standing there watching you.
Yeah.
I don't know. I read it as commentary on social media myself, but that's, and that's what's kind of cool about these types of books is, there's different ways you could read into it.
That is true.
I want to appreciate you, Squid, for dumping on the point I was making and then making me self-conscious about the point I was making. So
you're welcome. The very first line that he says after the question of the societal impact of social media is a major topic of this series. Do you think social media will break society? And he says, I actually have very little tolerance for scaremongering about new technology. And then there's like 16 more paragraphs I didn't read.
There's 16 more paragraphs that I didn't read.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem I have with this book that I have the hardest time overcoming, though, is its pacing.
Yeah. It does struggle with pacing.
It takes a long time to get anywhere in the plot.
And it's repetitive.
Yeah.
About halfway through the book, I was like, oh, we're at the conclusion. And I was like, we're halfway through the book. Uh-oh.
And that's the only issue I have with this book, because I like the humor. I like the setting. I like the ideas that it has. But good God, that pacing. And then you'll think it's going to start picking up again because things will happen, and then they'll just turn it back down again. It's just like, I don't need this.
It legitimately could have been at least 2 or 3 shorter books. Like if they had taken each book and made it into a different book, the pacing would have been better, because it kind of expect a book when you first start it to be starting a little slower, and then it would have been shorter, which probably would have made it a little bit easier for people to handle.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. I will say, for your sake, Celeste, that the second book has the pacing issue fixed.
Oh, good.
It reads a lot easier.
Does it have the Deus Ex Machina problem fixed?
I mean...
Because that's my major problem with the book, aside from just the fart jokes.
Now,
but that's just a side thing that I didn't appreciate.
Which Deus Ex Machina are we referring to? Because it happens
Everyone
a couple times.
lives. All the time, always.
No.
After very, very distinctly leading readers to believe that people have died. And then all of a sudden, everyone's fine.
At least Arthur never came back.
That's true. I liked Arthur as a character. I thought he would have been interesting to have around.
I feel like Arthur would have been
garbage
more
man.
More like not John, David Wong in John Dies at the End. Like, except just more trash because of things that he has done.
See, I never got that feeling that Arthur Livingston would be coming back. That was never anything that, like, really I had thought about.
What?
Having Arthur Livingston actually be alive at the end of the book.
Oh no, I didn't think he would be either.
No.
I was just saying it's a shame he didn't, because he was interesting.
I'm saying that at least he stayed dead.
And I think there was
some of the other people.
And as long as we're critiquing the book, I think another thing that I think would have benefited this book as well is have some of the main characters have a little bit more skin in the game. In that, like, early on in the book, okay, spoiler warning for people who haven't read this book.
I kind of already spoiled some things. So.
Yeah, but this one's kind of a bigger one. So skip ahead for probably about 2 minutes. But earlier on the book, you find out that there's someone in Zoe's entourage that had betrayed her.
That was so stupid.
And so I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, it's one of the suits. I'm hoping, which suits the betrayer, and of course you're thinking it's going to be Will, or at least I was hoping. But it ended up being some gardener that is mentioned in a side note of the book earlier at some point, and it's just like, really? It would have been more It would have been more interesting to me if they would have had one of the suits been the betrayer.
My issue with this, with Gary was his name, is his reasoning. He's like, nobody pays attention to me. I'm like, you're a gardener. He's like, your dad had golf with me. I'm like, you're a lucky gardener. Because, like, who golfs with their gardener?
Yeah.
Who has a gardener?
Well, that too.
Well, I mean, I know people, but yeah.
That's like the thing too, where it's like, oh, okay, so this is how we're resolving this thing that you've spent the entire book amping up and have been teasing the whole time, because every time one of the suits makes a decision, it's like, oh, is this the betrayal? Nope, it's another joke. Oh, is this the betrayal? Nope.
Can we just appreciate, though, the scene where Zoe and I think his name's Andre are talking and she's trying to explain to him what a Whopper is.
Yes.
And why his head looks like a Whopper. And he's like, my head looks like a cheeseburger?
Yep.
And I'm like, have you never had a Whopper?
Burger King. I would think of Burger King first.
I would not.
I don't like Whoppers, though.
I would think of the candy. Oh, I love Whoppers. I used to tear my mouth up with them.
Nope. Yeah. I liked Trey. Is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Trey
Those
was
were good
fabulous.
scenes.
Oh, him. Okay. Yeah.
Trey and Andre together was just like...
line from that one. Let me see if I can scroll down to it that I highlighted.
I highlighted 2 lines and they were both Will's lines. So you can tell who my favorite character was.
Will Blackwater.
You can tell who the main character of this book should have been.
Disagree.
Yeah, disagree.
Maybe not Zoe, but not Will.
I mean, I wouldn't mind a book like a prequel written from Will Blackwater's perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it was Will's book, it wouldn't be this story. So
That's true. There was a line, and it was because Goodreads tells me this, because Kendall told Goodreads this. Zoe goes, I don't think I can breathe in this. And Trey goes, yeah, that's normal. It's only because it's squishing all of your organs together. And I put a note on there. I was like, why do I know how this feels? And then the note goes, why does David Wong know how this feels? Like, why does he know what
women's fashion,
what shapewear feels like being put on? We have questions for you, David Wong.
So we already know what Squid's answer is to this, but Celeste, which of the suits was your favorite?
Echo.
I was about to say she liked Echo. I know it. I call it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you call mine then, Squid?
Oh, well, the way that I was gonna say also Echo, but then Wu is who I would think of.
No, it's Andre. Andre just amused me. Like I could. Andre is one of those people I feel like I could hang out with and have a really good time just hanging out with.
Yeah, just related to Will for the wrong reasons.
because of your bleak nihilistic outlook on life.
Sure. Uh-huh. That's not it. We have the same favorite pastimes.
Okay, I forget his name, but who here also expected that Zoe's first bodyguard was going to die? Armando, that's it.
Wait, expected him to what?
That who actually thought he was going to die? Oh, you expected him to die?
I expected a lot of people in this book to die, and I was disappointed more than once.
He was how do I say this? He was described to be too pretty to die.
Yeah,
if that makes sense, or to stay alive. Not to die, to stay alive.
Yeah. He got too much attention.
He did.
For a very short amount of time he was there.
Mm-hmm. Although,
the first time I read this
line. What are you going to say, John?
Oh, it's just the first time I read this book when they actually killed him. I'm like, he can't be dead. They wouldn't kill him off like that. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they would. They would.
I think and maybe that's kind of like my quote unquote problem with the book as an overarching thing, is that I think the book thinks it's more clever than it is, which kind of gives away all of its quote unquote clever choices. Because like for all the people that came back to life, they were like, and they're dead. And then the next thing it's like, they're alive. But for Armando, it's just like, and he's really dead. He's dead. He's dead. He's dead. Because he wants you to think that he's going to be alive still.
Yeah.
But because you keep saying, oh, and he's dead, I'm like, well, he's really dead because you are really beating this dead man. He is on the ground and you're just woof. Because the book tries to make you think certain things, but by doing that, it's like, I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Celeste, you said you had a quote.
Oh, just talking about Armando. It was a good line when she goes, the Statue of David could sue for copyright on this guy's abs. I was like, that's funny. That's funny. Like that's not something I'm into, but that's funny.
That is one thing I will say that David Wong has the ability to do, which is to create some very quotable lines.
He's good at one-liners.
Yeah, that's what it's like. I laughed at some lines, but I was like, I keep going, keep doing it.
There legitimately, there's several like aspects of things that just made me go, "What?" Like when they went to the drop party, to the funeral that was the drop party, and they were like, "Everyone's going to be monitoring your vitals and keeping watch of you." And I'm going, "You just said earlier in this chapter, see, she has social anxiety. This is a bad idea because she's going to have a panic attack, and it's not going to be for the reason that you think it is."
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that was a missed opportunity of Zoe should have had a panic attack at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And then like everyone been freaking out, trying to figure out why.
And I think that the three of us have been talking around the real star of this book. Because that was the one that you guys sent the most messages about, was about Stench Machine.
That was the one that I was okay that didn't die.
Yeah.
At one point I almost threw the book away. I was like,
Man,
if this cat dies.
Yeah. I'd have been gone. I'd have been off the podcast. I'd have been like, you know what? John recommended this. I can't talk to John anymore.
Cat died.
Because of Stench Machine?
The cat can't die.
If that cat was so relatable. As a cat owner, as the only cat owner on this podcast. Yep.
Like I used to own cats, and I agree. Very relatable.
Just like
This part of this conversation just makes me so excited for when you start reading the second book, Celeste.
Is the cat okay?
I'm not going to spoil the next book for you.
That's not spoiling it. That's assuring me that I can read it.
Unless the book is from Stench Machine's perspective, I don't think that's a spoiler.
Fair.
I will say that there are some events in the book that are core to the main narrative, and that's the reason why I can't spoil anything.
Okay, well, maybe I'm not going to read this then.
You should read it.
The cat cannot die. It's not allowed. Even of old age. Not allowed.
Not allowed, even of old age.
Also, I feel like Carlton was highly underutilized. That man knew how to cook.
Man, I wanted some of that Elvis sandwich that he had given her at the beginning.
They're not hard to make.
I know, but...
There is something about having somebody else cook that type of thing for you.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any other thoughts on this book or parts of the book they want to talk about?
When we get to it, I actually have a spiritual thing.
I have a quote that kind of goes with the spiritual thing, too.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's head on over to the spiritual thing.
Where are we going? Where do we head for that?
I was trying to go to the next segment of the podcast. It's good. Like, I'm trying to play by the rules, and y'all are just like stepping all over it. All right, Squid, what was your spiritual thing quote?
This was one of two quotes that I saved that I just thought was a really good quote and insightful into most human nature. So I don't know that it's really a spiritual takeaway, but it is commentary, I guess. That's the cat. Was not the quote.
The cat was quoting Stench Machine.
Yes.
The quote was, "This is why people get obsessed with the apocalypse. They want the world to die with them. We're all selfish. We hate the thought of everyone just moving on." And I was like, that's pretty true of a lot of apocalypse narratives.
Mm-hmm.
People are just like, well, I want to, what happens when the world ends. Not because we want to know what happens when everyone dies, but if I'm going to die, surely everyone else has to as well.
How
This
can you
is-
don't want to miss out without me?
Yeah.
This is my experience.
Right. Just that I'm the center of the universe. I'm the star
I
of
am
this
the main
story.
character, and everybody else is an NPC.
Yep.
That's a thought for some people.
That actually is something that is actually the perspective of one of the characters in the book It by Stephen King.
I mean, also, if you want to just talk about, we could talk about Canaanite gods for a little while based on this book.
Really?
Moloch?
Oh, Molech. Gotcha. Gotcha. All right.
I hated that that's the name he chose because I felt like it was trying to be deep and it wasn't.
I was, and please don't clip this or take this out of context, but I was kind of disappointed that they weren't sacrificing children to him.
Yeah.
What?
Because
if they're going to use that name,
with Molech,
they weren't in the Valley of the Sun either. So I mean,
but if you're going to use the name of a god, gotta tie it to, even if you were going to go into his backstory where he talks about being an abused child, you have to talk about sacrificing his childhood for what he's become.
Right.
And none of those ties were made. So instead it was just I found a fun name.
Which, to be clear, not okay with child sacrificing. Not a thing that we here at We Read Allegedly. We do not support
do not condone.
But there were other names they could have chosen.
I think if you think about it, though, it makes sense. This guy was trying to sound deep by picking that name, but I think it was an emphasis on how shallow he was. His philosophy of the juice. He was trying to sound all deep and but in the same sense.
Far more fitting if this man rolled up and he was like, "I'm Powerade," and I would have been like, "That checks out."
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. You got the juice. You've been lifting weights for the last 6 years.
Cool.
I would have been amused. I would have been amused if they would have just gone with O.J. Simpson. He's like, "It's about the juice."
Yeah. Honestly, anything else could have been funny because this man would have picked something absolutely stupid. But no. I'm going to write a new one with Powerade as the villain.
I would read it too.
Cool ice Gatorade.
I want to read a book by Squid written in the style of David Wong.
You will never.
So let's move on to the spiritual connections, Celeste.
So I actually connected to Zoe in several ways because she would say things about being a kid who grew up in a trailer park, who grew up poor, that type of thing. And for those who don't know, I did not have a lot of money when I was a kid. I didn't have any money when I was a kid. My family did not have a lot of money when I was a kid. So there were certain aspects that I was like, oh yeah, that actually tracks. So at one point, she's talking to Trey, because Trey is amazing. And she goes, "So I'm not trailer trash anymore because I can afford a guy to dress me?" And he goes, "Girl, you were never trailer trash. Your circumstances just forced you to dress like it." And that's a good way of looking at, we're not our circumstances. We are who God created us to be. We just have to deal with the things that are going on. So you may feel like trash, but you are not trash because God created you to be better. And he created you with a purpose and intricately different from everybody else. So that's my thought.
Cool.
I agree with that.
Yes. In fact, that was so good. We'll just go ahead and end that there.
There you go.
Don't sacrifice children.
And we do not advocate the sacrifice of children to Babylonian and Mesopotamian gods.
Consider sacrificing children. Get counseling, because we do support that.
We do. We do.
Yes. That being said, we want to thank you so much for listening to this episode of We Read Allegedly, the book reading portion of the Geek Devotions podcast network, the network to letting you know that you are loved. So if you get nothing beyond that from this podcast, we want you to know that you are loved, you are cared for, and there's a plan and purpose for your life. Feel free to check out any of the other podcasts that are on the Geek Devotions network. They're pretty slick. And, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to rate, and subscribe on whatever platform that you are listening, as that puts us in front of more like-minded individuals like yourself who may be interested in hearing what the three of us might think about books that Squids hates.
Or tell us why we're wrong.
Yes, and we do appreciate interaction. Please talk at us on the Geek Devotions Discord or the Devoted Geeks group on Facebook. We would love to hear what you
Goodreads
or through our Goodreads. We would love to hear what you think about any of the books that we have read, and we are highly encourage dialogue on reading because reading is nothing but the exchange of ideas. And we support that.
Sometimes bad ones.
Sometimes it's just fluff.
And sometimes it's just fluff, as per our last episode. So with that being said, thank you so much for listening. Celeste?
Yeah.
We can't leave Celeste.
Oh. Okay, so which one is it? Is it the fish?
Always.
Okay, just checking. So long, and thanks for all the fish.
Bye.
Bye.
We Read Allegedly is part of the Devoted Geeks Network, devoted to letting you know that you're loved. If you liked this episode, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Episodes come out the first Friday of every month. Feel free to join us next month as we read Station 11. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, join us on Facebook, check out our Instagram, or if you'd like, join our groups on Goodreads. You can search We Read Allegedly on Goodreads and find us there. We'll see you guys next month.
That's like, I have a satire I wrote of 50 Shades of Grey called P90X Shades of Fitness. Takes place in a gym.